with more and more stakeholders getting involved, like the sales leaders, eventually the marketing leaders, eventually the customer success leaders. A lot of stakeholders did throughout the process get involved, which made it more of a complex sales process because every team had their own priorities.
Welcome to the domin8 podcast. On this show, we talk with HubSpot's top sellers about their latest wins, pulling back the curtain to explore the challenges they ran into and the sales strategies they used to win the deal. I'm Stephen Saberin, Senior Partnership Manager for Aptitude 8, the world's largest technical HubSpot consulting firm. I'm speaking with Dan McGreevy and excited to talk with him today. Dan, it's great to have you on the show and look forward to hearing some of the details of how you were able to successfully close this deal. Before we dive in, tell us a bit about your background. How'd you get started in sales and make your way into the HubSpot ecosystem?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Great to be on the podcast. My name is Dan McGreevy. I'm a enterprise sales executive at HubSpot. I've been here for 8 years. What kind of led me to HubSpot? In the beginning, I graduated from college. I started off in sales, not knowing exactly what to do. When I graduated, was a BDR for a tech startup in Boston. Yeah. One of those gigs that you get in, make 100 calls a day, really learned how to pitch, handle objections, schedule meetings, do negotiation, the basics of sales, if you will. Then I went to a startup out in San Francisco. That one didn't work out as well. And luckily I found HubSpot for my next gig. And that was 8 years ago when I was hired as a mid-market representative initially in 2019.
That's awesome. That's great. I know that starting on the BDR side and making 100 calls a day, I feel like we've all been there. As you've progressed through your career and just the sales philosophy, do you have one? Could you describe that in one sentence, and what would that look like?
The initial gig, the 100 calls a day, I feel like we could do a whole podcast just on the stories of that type of come in and just cut your teeth, learn sales. But when I came to HubSpot, the kind of methodology really helped build kind of my sales whole acumen to the next level. It was really a lot more of understanding customers, being curious, learning about the methodology that HubSpot uses is GPCT, goals, plans, challenges, timeline, where before it was just BANT, which was really a lot more focused on pitching. Do you have budget? Can you make a decision? Do you need this? Like, when can you buy it? So the HubSpot methodology worked like a lot better in earning clients' trust and being able to do consultative selling. So that was the beginning of really learning the next layers of sales.
Nice. And knowing some of your past and where you came from and evaluating that, what do you find that's most rewarding about selling within the HubSpot ecosystem, maybe compared to some of those other selling experiences?
I think one of the greatest things about selling for HubSpot is the ecosystem. It is the customers that really do love HubSpot and spread the good word about HubSpot. It's the community members of the HubSpot user groups, people that are either partners or customers or building their careers off HubSpot that are going to events. It's the ecosystem of solution partners and app partners that really are like the moat for HubSpot. I remember years ago, like 7-8 years ago, one of our co-founders was talking about, I think it was maybe Dharmesh, maybe it was Halligan that said it, but the moat of HubSpot was really the whole ecosystem that surrounds it. That anybody could copy our code, build a killer platform. And it really goes into everything, like from selling, customer service, renewal management, like solving for the customer. It is those things, those hard decisions sometimes where you have to do something that's right for the customer and maybe tough for you as an individual contributor. But that culture has created this community of people that actually truly really love HubSpot, so it's paid off.
That's an interesting take. I think it'd be the same take from myself being in the ecosystem. Being on the partner side is the same. It's really the community that you have around you, from app partners to HubSpot sellers like yourselves. That's interesting, and I love it. I think it does make the selling completely like a different ball game because you just feel supported in every angle, right? So
Yeah, I think HubSpot has a good reputation. There are businesses out there. I mean, everyone might know some that don't have as good as reputations, and I think it just makes it a bit tougher, I would imagine, to sell when people are already thinking that you might be selling in a certain type of way.
So, Dan, let's jump into the deal we're going to talk about today. But before we do that, you mind giving me a little background on the particular industry that you're thinking of here for the client? How did they come to you, and what was the state when they, of the company when they first started communicating and engaging with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So this was one of my favorite opportunities that I worked in 2024, but it actually began in 2023. It was a target account that I was working with my BDR, Sophia Petri at the time. And this specific account was right in the wheelhouse of the segment that we work with. It fit our perfect ideal customer profile. The marketing team, they had 50 plus sales members. They had 50 to 100 customer service members. And that's exactly what we were looking for. We were able to actually get them to come to one of our big events. So really use that as an impetus for reaching out. Inbound, which was our annual conference. And their COO, I think, was actually joined by someone on the marketing team, was actually able to join the conference.
Oh, nice.
And it was really leveraging the power of events coming on and allowing somebody to meet our customers, go to events. So just the power of events really helped kick this off. The timing of the opportunity, I really wanted to go holistic, all in on HubSpot. But they were very much an incumbent competitor of ours. And after the conference, we were really able to establish that there might be a smaller way to start with them, which was our HubSpot CMS, our content management system, the website. So we really started this did discovery here, learned what they needed on the website, use it as a way, hey, maybe if HubSpot works out well for you here, then we can look at bigger and broader opportunities. It started really as a seed and grow, which was awesome, a land and expand. And what we didn't know at the time was they were going through renewals with our competition. And it was one of those things where I don't think they had the most pleasant experience. And it was just timing and everything worked out really well. So the other members of the executive team on the C-level wanted to start seeing if we could actually work with them in a broader capacity. And that kind of kicked off this whole year-long sales process. And it really was triggered off of setting them as a target account, reaching out, and timing all kind of just rolling up into one. So that magical sales moment.
Gotcha. Essentially, they came to you and it seemed like there was a lot of opportunity there. So you're chomping at the bit to introduce HubSpot into their operations, but there was more of a crawl, walk, run methodology that you guys ended up deploying. How did, for inbound, you mentioned the COO was possibly at inbound. Were you able to meet them there? And how do you think that kind of affected the entire relationship and sales cycle? And what impact did that have for this deal?
Because this was a target account, we were already thinking about how to work as a team to really give them the best experience and give us the best shot at earning their business. I was actually unable to attend inbound that year. I was at a wedding abroad in Spain. And so solution engineer on our team and my manager, so solution engineer Amanda, my manager Samantha, were able to meet with them in person, and we game planned, hey, this is what we know about this team. Please make the time to meet. And we had this whole internal Slack group going on of what have I already discussed with them and what ideally events we should be sending to them. So it really was a team effort, I will say. And then also having an understanding of their business and their needs allowed me to curate a little bit, what sessions they should be going to. What the event helped do was get that excitement for agreeing to more meetings, and that gave us the opportunity to learn more about their business, really just show curiosity. I think the more curiosity we showed about not only understanding their business, but their the goals that they had for the year, the challenges they're having with their current system. It allowed conversation to very organically come into, well, here would be the art of the possible if it was HubSpot. I think like they genuinely felt that we were trying to figure out if we were a good fit for growing a partnership.
Sure.
Versus us just pitching of this is what we do. This is why we're better than competition. And that set us up, I think, for just more and more initial meetings. And it was that way with the whole team, myself and the solution engineer on it, and even my manager meeting with them at the event.
That's interesting. I've found that often in deals that I've been working, the genuine curiosity and problem-solving mentality is something that folks can see through on the other side, and having that always goes a long way, where they're like, you actually care about learning the pain points, learning the challenges, and figuring out like how to solve for that, even if it's maybe outside of what the ecosystem can handle, bringing in other app partners or partners in general to solve for it. That's awesome. And then talking about like challenges and getting into that a little bit, what were their pain points? Did they have anything that particularly stood out or that they were trying to solve for predominantly? And what did that look like?
We have this good first experience. They end up buying like one of HubSpot's smaller hubs in a sense. And it turns out that they want to assess other CRM platforms. They're not sure that their CRM platform is seeing them as a valuable partnership. And so their executive team wanted to get on the phone and kind of explore HubSpot. And I think for CRM and for kind of other products, I think the lens that we went into it with was also like confirming, are we even a good fit? Really, again, learning about their business. But it became now, can the CRM be a good fit? My lens, I saw also marketing was a good fit and customer service was a good fit, but it was obviously a priority of, can we move the CRM off? With more and more stakeholders getting involved, we had the sales leaders, eventually the marketing leaders, eventually the customer success leaders. A lot of stakeholders did throughout the process get involved, which made it more of a complex sales process because every team had their own priorities. So it was a little bit of something to be mindful of throughout the process, the scope creep, and it was coming from the top down that this was really meant to be a CRM-centric opportunity. But also, how do we tell the story of, if we're going to do this, like what is the 1 + 1 = 3 parts of the equations? Like how can we get, if we're going to move on to HubSpot CRM, how is moving to HubSpot marketing and HubSpot customer service off of their 3 different platforms at the time help strengthen even like the CRM use case? How does that make it easier for the sales team when the initial issue is adoption of the sales platform, the difficulty of modifying like a very complex legacy CRM platform? So how does using HubSpot CRM, how does that solve for those? But also, how does it solve for issues that they might not be thinking about yet that did come down to, hey, reporting issues? One of the issues could be that the marketing and customer service platforms aren't connected at all. Documenting everything was really important due to this. Recap emails that were also continually getting shared with the executive team, whether or not they were on the call. A side note on this one was I did work with Aptitude 8 on this deal. And I did talk to Brian Byler actually prior to this deal. And I said, hey, Brian, like one of the things that I personally like working with in partners is partners that can help me with my own organization, because I love writing recap emails. I love writing. I love copy. I love talking and setting up the meetings. But I do also recognize some of my weaknesses, and sometimes just organizing everything, next steps, notes, and all that stuff. I was just trying to find someone who could complement me. Megan Smith over at Aptitude 8 was perfect in this opportunity.
Megan Brooks,
sorry.
It's all good.
Megan Smith is someone here at HubSpot that I also work with. Megan Brooks. But yeah, so that, just building on the sales team, we had our internal sales team, we had the solution engineers, solution consultants, we had Megan, and also the technical kind of experts over there as well. When I kind of take a step back and look at this whole opportunity, there's managing the internal team, the external teams, So making sure that there's always next steps, whichever path we're going down. We had a joint evaluation plan, kind of a mutual action plan, different names for it, to stay organized internally, but also external facing of what steps have we accomplished, what are all of our notes, what are the questions outstanding, what are the requirements that we have or haven't covered yet. The bigger the deal got, the more we could organize and keep it streamlined, like the more important it became as well.
That's awesome. And it's good to hear the team was able to help with that, because that can be, we've all encountered it. I feel like we run into this all the time, where the more stakeholders you essentially tag into a particular deal, it just increases the complexity, because each of them, to your point, have their own priorities, they have their own challenges and how they're viewing it and how they want to deploy everything. Was that, I guess, from a kind of two questions. Firstly, was that a big portion of navigating the deal, is setting expectations and trying to rein everybody in, or herd the cats, as we also say? And then is that an area where we were able to actually step in and help with that as well from like past experience?
There's no cutting corners, like skipping steps. Like each new persona that came in and each new business unit, whether it's marketing, sales, customer service, required that kind of start from beginning moment once again. Like, what does this team focus on? What tools do they use? What does their day-to-day look like? How do they work with other teams? Even doing reverse demos of the tools that they're using before going into HubSpot product demonstrations. And there was no skipping steps. And every persona was a bit different. Some stakeholders were more into the idea of moving to a new platform than others. And having that individual dialogue, whether it's on the call or even off the calls, I think became an important part of the whole process as well. I think there were times I could tell some people were just a little bit more hesitant than others, and making sure that I was also giving those people like the proper attention or even ears to let them know like I was listening to what they had hesitations about. And like big changes, business systems like changing does bring potential risk. All spade is spade. Each stakeholder just needed to make sure that their own kind of processes were covered. Aptitude 8, or just using like a HubSpot partner in general, part of the reasons I am always doing this on any deal that has any type of sophistication at all is really about risk mitigation. So when there's hesitation as well, working with the partner to really double down on there's a plan for this, or logging, documenting what are the concerns and what is the plan we're putting in place to mitigate any risk. Like we're using a partner to make sure this plan is successful. Also, the partners being able to talk to opportunities that they've done that were very similar. Like you guys, your teams do this all day, every day. Hearing stories of, okay, this was another case of a similar problem and this is what we're able to do and this was the outcome, was also really important for hesitant stakeholders.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's interesting, I think sometimes from a sales perspective as well, I don't know if you've noticed, sometimes it's an easy thing to come at a particular opportunity from, we look at it from an ROI and we're looking at all the upside, whereas a lot of the stakeholders that we, particularly once you get into IT or the security aspects, they're looking at it from a risk perspective, right? So unless the ROI so far outweighs the risk, or there's other ways to, like you said, mitigate the risk and to address it, that can be an impasse, and that can be one way that you lose an opportunity if you fail to even acknowledge the risk that's in the room. It's essentially an elephant that you have to address, right? That's interesting, and it's one, again, becomes more complex with the more stakeholders you have involved. Were there any particular like blockers that you like that came up during that, or either champions or blockers, and how did you work through that?
Yeah, always leaning on kind of the champion was very valuable. One of my sales MOs is sometimes like there can be the perfect fit business, but you more importantly need the perfect fit persona or person or relationship in an opportunity, somebody that is willing to drive change and sees the benefit of driving change and is willing to move those internal mountains that I'm not able to as an outsider. Having our own debrief calls internally of how calls go and planning for calls not only the HubSpot team, but also our external teams, Aptitude 8 in this one, but also their debrief calls with our champion were equally as important. He helped me also establish what areas where there's clarity on and what areas maybe there's confusion on. I think like a confused mind does nothing. So just having clarity on, again, like not taking shortcuts if there are questions or there is uncertainty in how something is going to be in the new world, the new HubSpot ecosystem in this case. You can't cut corners. You can't say, this person, like, they're not going to have a big decision at the end of the day. Every voice has a bit of influence. And that was just a saying I'd heard one time years ago, and I just see how relevant it is. And sales, like a confused mind does nothing, making sure there's clarity.
That's very true. And it's also the fact that you had a strong champion is a huge win of itself, right? I think one of the most challenging scenarios are the deals that go by committee rather than a single person leading that.
Yeah, and then I guess like another blocker in this one was interesting in that we got to the very end and we thought we were in a really good position and done everything perfectly and we were about to move forward. And that's actually when we were advised that their board told us that we need to evaluate a different solution partner because they need two options. This was hard because now we're getting closer to the end timeline that we needed to hit. We have milestones. The board's giving this direction even though our champion isn't wanting for this to happen. And now a really tight plan. How can we achieve all of these next steps within a window to get them the second quote to hand to the board, do it in a fair way that's fair to partner one and partner two, and hit the deadlines. So it was a lot of double checking, triple checking. Can we do this in a time that, like, can we get all the meetings scheduled? At that stage, it became even more tight, like joint evaluation plan. We booked every single one of the next steps in one go, having it logged. Are we on track? Are we falling behind? Again, the multi-threading, the keeping in continual communication with the stakeholders, regardless if they're on the calls or not. What has happened, the recaps of the calls, keeping them just like totally across what stages we're at. Again, are we on track, falling behind? And that helped us actually get it done on time because it was coming down to the wire.
So intense organization, which we always like working with you as well. Those JEPs, I think, come in handy for that specific reason. And that's good to hear. Along those lines, that sounds like a giant twist at the end of the road, essentially, but
something like, we weren't expecting.
For sure. And you gotta love it. It's something that even if you try to mitigate early on, sometimes you don't know because they haven't gone and talked to the board and the current evaluation team doesn't know that what they're going to ask for, so they think everything's fine with solo sourcing, either whether or not it's on the software side or it's the partner side.
In retrospect, it might have even been a lesson learned. Maybe I didn't qualify for something good enough. I maybe should have known if that was the case in the end, right? That every opportunity, win or lose, definitely has takeaways and lessons learned throughout them. And that would have been one for sure.
Was there any big like roadblocks or like technical limitations that we came across or that you came across during the eval, right? So budget constraints or technical pieces or even like misaligned expectations. Were there any things that came up mid-sale besides that, like the kind of curve at the end there, that were interesting, and how did you work through those?
Their whole stack they had been using for probably 10 years or so. So I think just one of the themes was just because they do something one way or just because they could do something like a certain way in HubSpot, was it the best way to do that? For example, HubSpot has custom objects, and it's a really powerful extension of how you can customize HubSpot being a very flexible enterprise system at this stage. But can we solve the business processes in a more simple way? And I think that's just a really powerful mindset a lot of times for customers to have, is to try to keep it simple. Try to, like, I think of Apple and Steve Jobs, why people love Apple so much is because it's so simple and like things are so streamlined. And I always challenge, even when we're doing reverse demos and I'm seeing their current CRM setup and every bell and whistle is inside of it for every specific thing, like really trying to strip down, do we need all of these different properties to be filled out, when an opportunity is created or a client's created, Or are the types of insights and reports that we need, are we thinking about them wrong? Should we step back and actually talk about what insights you need to make decisions versus just, can we make every single report like for that you have in your system today? Yes, we can. But again, using this kind of opportunity for just because you do things a certain way today, let's use this as an opportunity for switching CRMs to try to see if we can do things in a more streamlined manner. So that was a common theme, I think, that tug and pull of, can we do this whole laundry list of 1,000 different things, and really taking that challenging mindset of, can we do those 1,000 things in 100 things instead, and trying to help simplify. It can create those awkward moments as well when you feel like you're being a challenger, but also that's how I think you come out on the other side a little bit more as a respected consultant, when you do take the can you do these things and come with a bit of a different lens and challenge just like a little bit, but coming from the right place. Yeah, that was a theme.
100%. Yeah, because I feel like if you're just looking for parity and you're going just line for line on just making sure it's like aligns and you're going to just copy and paste, then it becomes a budget conversation opposed to anything else, or maybe like a UI to an extent. Essentially, if you're not taking, to your point, the advantage of, hey, we're doing it this way, we can do this in multiple ways. Well, how do we optimize our processes at the same point? Which is, I think we've found that a lot as well, is when people are making these changes, it's a perfect opportunity to really evaluate some of the operations and the automations and how they're actually getting work done to streamline that and become more effective as a team. So that's an interesting thing that came up there.
And it really did help us too, because it started out as just using CMS, wanting to explore CRM, but then they came on board all of the hubs, marketing and sales and operations hub and customer service hub. So their initial intention of wanting to just move off of CRM because they didn't necessarily have the greatest experience with their vendor, but also uncovering a bunch of other underlying kind of pains and challenges, turned into a much bigger opportunity, even though it wasn't necessarily their intention when they opened that door.
Yeah, that's awesome too. It might have been a long sales cycle, but eventually they just kept adding on to the capabilities there and taking on more and more product, which is always great to hear. In the end, as we get towards the end of this, it sounds like there was a lot of complexity through it. There was a lot of coordination overall. It doesn't sound like there was any major wrench maybe until the end where they wanted to review another vendor. But what in the end got them across the line? And then what was the signature? Was that a long process? And how did you make sure that we actually got ink on the page from the HubSpot perspective?
I guess things that helped a lot in the time when it was time to close is we had done a really good job of documenting the whole business case, use case, from start to finish. And I think we did a really good job drumming up excitement from all of these different teams now that are now involved and wedged their own way into this opportunity. They wanted to get involved from a marketing and customer service side. And so now we have a lot of internal champions or promoters, if you will, that are asking and wanting HubSpot. They see a better world where all their data is aligned. They see better tools for the different functions they want to do. So that helped a lot. Knowing that going into negotiations. Now, their board and leader definitely was a really hard negotiator, truth be told. So it was a lot of give and take. Great, we need a better price. Okay, fine. Can we do annual billing? Okay, better price or these gives. Can we do multi-year? Can we shift around the start date? It did really become a give and take. Anytime anything was asked for, what are we getting in return? And I think at the end, we all feel like we won. It was a really, I think the best word kind of in negotiation. What's a fair deal? And we had a time to get it done by the time of the renewal. So everything was reverse engineered of we had to hit a start date, and it was known and agreed for a long time already. It was one of those opportunities I think we just all felt like is really buttoned up going across the finish line.
From the end of, we'll say, the evaluation, I'm curious, how I know the sales cycle itself was fairly long, sounded like it was almost a year, but from when they finished the evaluation, it will say officially, to signature, how long was that period?
Let's see. So probably a month.
Okay. Yeah.
It was interesting because we had that period where we're negotiating back and forth, and then that wrench was thrown in. And so now we had to accomplish all of this and take those steps back and re-go to the board one of the things that we tried to do for all their meetings, that the board meetings would happen every 3 or 4 weeks, help them also with like their presentations that they're taking to the board. So there's all those moving pieces. CFO got involved, of course. Like in these opportunities that the numbers are higher for the revenue, you have a lot more moving pieces that you need to make sure they're all in the joint evaluation plan. Was legal approved? Was IT team, have they had their say? The CFO had their say. The board, obviously, having additional criteria that I should have qualified for earlier. But the joint evaluation plans really help you make sure you're covering all your bases, especially when you review them with your champion. When you can say, hey, here are the steps we haven't covered yet, they can help make sure they get covered.
It sounds like it took a lot of coordination. Is there anything that you would have done differently? What's the takeaway? What's the learning piece here? What is hindsight on this one?
That kind of bit me in the bum in the end was expectations of pricing a little too early, because truth be told is the scope did get bigger, and then it did create tougher conversations towards the tail end of it, is when you go back to leadership and now the number is higher because that scope creep happened and they're surprised because I gave different expectations. It's one of those hard things to do in sales, is they want to know what they're getting into. But just trying to give myself a little bit more of a broader potential expectations to give leadership of maybe next time around, because the more value you show, more people want to get involved and the scope increases a bit. Also, just making, again, if I was to do it again, make sure I'm trying to figure out what the criteria is going to be. Had I known that they're going to need 2 different contracts to look side by side for partners, that would have saved us a big headache at the end.
Interesting. Nice. Yeah, those are always valuable, and appreciate the insight on that one. And then the last question would be, what trends are you seeing? Like, how do you see like this kind of shaping the future of selling with HubSpot? And what is, in your opinion, what does that look like going into 2025 and beyond?
Curating the best sales experience definitely seems to be things we did to differentiate ourselves. We'd send like Vidyard, like HubSpot sales video follow-ups, so like they needed to see a functionality again, having joint evaluation plans that were really easy to access. We recently just started using like a digital sales room type of tool where we can put all of our documents and resources, recordings of calls, our joint evaluation plan linked to IT documents, videos that we've recorded for them, notes from the implementation plan and all the requirements. Really leaning into how to leverage the tools that are at your disposal to make the buying process easier for them. Having that one-stop shop, like having them see that every stone has been turned over and everyone's on the same page. I just see that being what separates the deals that get closed won and the ones that get closed lost. Again, going back to confused minds do nothing. And if they can feel confident that in you and your team and your partner and the work that's been done, it's a lot easier to say yes.
Awesome. So thank you so much, Dan, for joining us today, sharing your insights, a little bit behind the story of this particular deal, getting across the line. It's been really fascinating to hear about the challenges you faced and some of the strategies that helped you succeed. Dan, any final thoughts on this, just to cap everything off?
It was great working with Aptitude 8 once again on this opportunity. The HubSpot solution partners definitely help set HubSpot apart, and it's the experience with your team is no different. So it's great working with you all on this one, and I look forward to doing more with you all. And I think HubSpot and Aptitude 8 as well are going places. So thanks for having me on.
Awesome, Dan. Thanks for joining. For our listeners, I hope you enjoyed the episode. You can connect with me, Stephen Saberin, on LinkedIn to keep the conversation going, or check out Aptitude 8 at aptitude8.com to learn how we're partnering with sellers and solution teams to drive success. Until next time, keep selling, keep learning, and keep dominating. Thanks for tuning in.